The snow had a way of swallowing sound, wrapping the hills in quiet like cotton stuffed in the ears of God. It blanketed the world so thick even the wind sounded muffled, more memory than breath. Trees bowed under its weight, fence posts wore hats of frost, and smoke from the cabin chimney twisted up like a prayer that no longer knew what it asked for. He'd seen winters like this before, when the creeks froze solid and men stopped praying because silence came quicker than grace. The cabin stood against the cold like an old dog defending its last bone. Inside, the giant rancher moved slowly, sparing his joints and saving his voice, because in solitude, speaking had a way of sounding foolish. His name hadn't passed another's lips in near a year, and he hadn't minded that fact. Then came the knock. Not loud. Just 3 small taps, like a question too shy to finish itself. He thought it might have been the wind until the second knock came, softer still. He opened the door expecting nothing. What he found was everything. A woman no older than 25 stood beneath the porch beam, her shawl half slipped from her shoulders, damp with snow. In one arm she clutched a cloth bundle tied tight with faded red thread. In the other, an eyeless rag doll hung like a forgotten ghost. 2 girls stood in front of her, barefoot despite the snow, one with tangled braids and trembling knees, the other barely to his thigh, her cheeks apple red and chapped from cold. The younger one blinked up at him. "Can we spend the night in your cabin?" she asked. The question should have been easy to answer. Yes or no. Mercy or stone. But he just stood there, frozen. Not from the cold, but from something old and brittle that cracked inside him like thawed earth. The woman said nothing. She didn't plead. Didn't explain. Just looked past him into the warmth of his cabin like someone remembering what a fire used to feel like. That look was what undid him. He stepped back without a word. They entered slowly. The girls first, one clinging to the other's hand, the other dragging her doll by its hair. The woman followed last, her steps uneven, as if pain had taken up home in her hips. She didn't ask for anything else. She stood near the wall, unmoving, her breath clouding in the air as if unsure whether she was allowed to exhale. He poked at the fire, threw on 2 logs, brought the wool quilt down from the hook and laid it over the girls, who had curled up without command on the rug by the hearth. "I can take the floor," she said finally, her voice low and frayed. He nodded once. She lowered herself to the wooden planks with a wince but didn't complain. The only sound was the fire crackling and the girls' shivering breaths beginning to even out. Come morning, the storm had worsened. The world outside was white from here to heaven. He set water to boil and fried the last of his salt pork. No one asked. He just filled 3 plates, sliced thin, laid plain, and placed them on the table. Then he sat and waited. The older girl approached first, slow as a squirrel to a stranger's hand. She glanced at her mother, who gave a faint nod. The girl climbed into the chair with both knees tucked beneath her, hands too small for the fork. The younger followed, still holding the doll. The woman remained where she was. "Eat," he said, rough from disuse. She looked at him like she hadn't heard English in years. Then she sat. Later, after the girls had drifted to sleep again and the fire had dipped to coals, he found her standing near the mantel, her fingers ghosting over a small wooden carving, rough-hewn and cracked. It was of a woman kneeling beside a child. He'd made it long ago and had forgotten it was even there. "She yours?" she asked. He didn't answer. She didn't press. That silence between them held more truth than conversation. The next day the snow kept falling. He handed her a pair of worn gloves from his trunk. She didn't put them on. She just turned them over in her hands like they were something sacred. "I can help," she said. He led her to the chopping stump. Her grip on the axe was wrong. He stepped behind her and adjusted it wordlessly. Their hands touched briefly. She flinched, not from him but from the memory of someone who hadn't corrected her so gently. Inside, the girls played with a broken horseshoe and buttons. The younger one called the doll Miss Buttonface and introduced her to every chair in the cabin. The rancher repaired the cracked window frame, careful not to look too long at the woman folding his shirts to repay his kindness. He hadn't asked. She did it anyway. On the 3rd morning, the sun rose cold and sharp, the snow glittering like glass. He saddled the horse and rode into town for flour, leaving them with a fire and his last apple. When he returned, something had changed. A man had come. A neighbor. Old, stiff-spined, mouth full of gossip. He saw the woman through the window and made a noise. "You always taking strays?" the man asked. The rancher didn't answer. Just stared until the man left without another word. That night, the woman stood by the door, shawl back around her shoulders, her bundle packed again. "I shouldn't stay," she said. "They'll say things. About me. About you." The rancher said nothing. "I'm not your trouble," she added. He looked at her. Not with anger. Not even sorrow. Just the quiet of someone who had built his life on silence because noise never brought back what was lost. "If you go," he said, "I won't stop you." She nodded, her chin trembling. "I didn't think you would." She gathered the girls. The younger one was half asleep, the doll dragging behind her. At the door the older paused, then turned and ran back. She placed something on the porch, a doll-sized scarf, knit from string and buttons, and whispered, "It's for the cold." The door shut behind them. The cabin was suddenly much too quiet. He didn't sleep that night. Just sat in his chair staring at the coals, the spoon she'd cleaned lying on the table beside two others. He didn't put it away. The next morning snow covered her footprints. The next it covered the scarf. And the next it covered the ache. But on the fourth morning, something new was there, tied to his gatepost with red thread, a piece of the woman's bundle. Inside was a drawing in charcoal, a cabin, crooked but full of light, with 4 stick figures and a doll with no eyes. He stared at it for a long time. Then he put on his coat. He found them near the river bend, under a pine tree where the snow was thinner. The woman was trying to start a fire with shaking hands, and the girls were huddled close. She didn't look surprised to see him, only tired. "I didn't want them to grow up thinking warmth was borrowed," she said. He said nothing, just knelt in the snow beside them. "I won't be your burden," she whispered. He looked at the older girl, then at the younger one still holding that eyeless doll. "We don't need fixing," he said quietly. "Just a place to belong." She cried then, not loudly. Just enough for her shoulders to shake. He stood and held out his hand. She didn't take it. But she stood too. That was enough. When they returned to the cabin, he pulled out the third chair. She hung her shawl on the wall beside his hat. The youngest climbed onto his lap without asking. The oldest handed him the doll, now with one button eye sewed back in. They didn't speak much that night. But when the girl called across the table, "Mama, I'm still hungry," no one corrected her. And in the golden hush of firelight, with snow tapping gentle at the windows, a new kind of silence was born. Not the lonely kind, but the kind that fills a room after someone has been welcomed home. It wasn't a mansion. Wasn't a wedding. Wasn't a promise made loud. It was 3 spoons on a wooden table. And the way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't watching. And maybe that's how homes are built. One small kindness at a time. Which city are you watching our video from? Please leave a comment. Please subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you.